the invitation.
Yeah, it's been kind of an interesting couple months for 1,000 reasons. On top of that, taking over some responsibilities at Bull Moose Club and not really having the chance to meet anyone in person before I talk to them. So anytime anybody agrees to meet with me on here, I'm pretty happy. Like, oh, hi, this is your face.
Yeah.
So I've got some quick questions for you, some warm-up questions, and then I've got some more serious questions, I guess, about, you know, what you're going through, what some successes you're finding and some challenges you're having. And so just a little bit of background about you is you're a Capital District native, right? You're from Guilderland.
Yes.
And a Union grad and an Albany Law grad.
Yes.
Right. Awesome. And recently you kind of did a creative pivot into the world of hospitality. So
Yeah.
Leyla opened the Yard, which is at the Nick, correct?
Yes, it's not inside the Nick, it's adjacent to.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
It's in the old, when that was the Knickerbocker like newspaper, the space that I'm in was their garage where the newspapers would come in and get loaded onto the trucks.
Oh, awesome. So it's the perfect spot for that.
Yeah.
That's great. So if you haven't checked out their website, check out the Yard on Facebook, and on their actual website. I was just on there because I know I was, you know, planning on going, and unfortunately,
and then this happened.
That's on pause. So,
right. And just so
we'll get there.
Just so the website is theyardalbany.com.
Okay.
And my handle on social media is The Yard Albany.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So just a quick warm up, rapid fire. Are you a ranch or blue cheese girl?
Ranch.
Ranch. All right. It's fair. Yeah. It's fair. I still like you. All right. How about spring or fall?
Spring, I guess.
Spring. I think so too. Looking forward to summer. It always feels a little better than letting it go.
Right.
All right. And in terms of hospitality, are you a hot drinks or an ice drinks kind of gal?
Iced, I'd say.
Yeah. Me too. It's probably got to go hand in hand with the spring thing.
Yeah.
But so just to kind of figure out what you're experiencing as a small business owner, someone who changed their career path into you know, something so exciting, something new, and you know, the bar and restaurant scene is struggling so bad, but you did this creative pivot in your life and your career path, and now how are you finding that you have to kind of change directions and change your thinking at this time?
Well, that's sort of like a loaded question. So the pivot is something that I had been working on for 3 years, you know, from inception of the idea to the execution of the idea took me a very long time, because there's like so much thought that went into the Yard. And I think if people go or have gone to the other Axe bars in the area and then they come to mine, they're going to immediately see that I had a lot more thought into what my space is about. So for me, between inception and execution of idea, there were so many challenges because, you know, when you start from nothing, it's a challenge. And there's a lot of things that are outside of your control when you're building out a commercial retail space. You're dependent on a lot of other people for information, for, you know, progress and things like that. So, you know, I've weathered a lot of storms, but I opened my doors for my grand opening and 3 days later, you know, closed my doors because of the shutdown. So, you know, nobody anticipated this. So from my experience of having to just climb this hill for so long, I think I'm in a better position emotionally and I guess from a practical standpoint than a lot of other businesses who had been in their flow and then like suddenly, boom, you've got nothing. The other thing for me is, even though I did that pivot, I never took my lawyer hat off, and I didn't intend to until I got the yard to a place where I could remove my lawyer hat. Right. So I'm actually very, very lucky because I have a marketable skill, that I have something to fall back on. I might have to keep the lawyer hat on a lot longer than I want to. But that's not something to complain about, right? Not in the current time. From the business perspective and having to kind of rethink what my creative idea is and where it is and where it needs to go, that's really a significant challenge. I'm not really a restaurant. You haven't been to the yard, but I have a very tiny kitchen. It's not even a kitchen. You could call it like a kitchenette, right? So when Governor Cuomo says restaurants and bars are essential and they can do takeout, that's not my business model. Like, I can't do takeout. It's not sustainable. And I'm not going to invest capital to do that, because it's not going to keep the lights on long term. So that's out the door for me. The yard, what people come to the yard for is an experience. And the entire thought of the yard is built on this sort of idea of community and a communal experience. So I don't really know how to pivot outside of that. I will tell you one thing that I am thinking about is, and I started this idea before coronavirus hit, but now it seems even more relevant and something to pursue. Because the yard is such a unique space, and because the lay of the landscape for weddings is changing, and you have sort of more of a market for so-called micro weddings, I thought the yard would make a great venue for a micro wedding that, you could have a lot of fun, you could have your party, you could do sort of this all-inclusive thing. I could partner with other businesses in the downtown area and team up and roll this into like a package. So now is sort of like the perfect time to put the energy into thinking about that and making that something to offer when we come out of this. So I am working on that. I've reached out to a couple of businesses. I'm interested in talking to, photographers, bakers, people who have salons, if there's a DJ, if there's a restaurant that wants to be listed as a possible caterer, anybody in an industry that people who have weddings, go to for services. So that's something that I think I can make work in my space. And I also think you're going to see a lot more micro weddings, because think about all of the weddings that have been canceled, and now people don't have the resources to have the wedding that they wanted. Right. So, that's something that I might be able to pivot and put on the table to sustain the yard. But, really the yard isn't going to be what it is and what it should be until people feel comfortable to go out and be in crowds. If the governor says you have to operate at a certain capacity, let's say he says 30%, well, all right, I can make that work because I can make people reserve in advance and then I can control the flow of traffic. But that's not, like, he can't, I guess he could, but he should not make that a long-term solution, because the restaurant, bars, hospitality industry won't survive. So
I hear that. My evening job, I work at a bar in Troy, and so I certainly hear that. And I think the micro wedding, my younger brother's getting married in the summer, and like they're looking at it and how are we going to pull this off and how are we going to make those changes? So I think what you're saying is totally hits the nail on the head. People are going to look for different solutions. They're going to look for non-conventional event spaces. Right. And I know personally, a few of my friends who actually just got married, their favorite lawn game is cube. So they would be, they would have been so happy.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's definitely the market for it, and definitely, to have, like, to be thinking in that mindset of how can I adapt this to fit this new need is awesome. Right. And I'm really excited to hear you say these things. So, God forbid I ever get married. I know where my friends would be super happy to do it.
Right.
But that's awesome. So, and this is a question I have, kind of, again, sort of the bartender in me, and kind of having having jobs in hospitality forever, it's so social, and it's so, you know, there's so many working parts. There's so many people involved. You have your guests, you have your regulars, you have the people you work with, you know, your bosses, everybody. It's, you know, going to work doesn't feel like going to work. So what are some ways like you're staying connected with those people you've been working with, the people kind of that you hope to build into the community going forwards? Are you finding you're doing things digitally, or are you kind of just letting it happen more organically?
I'm, you know, so I connect with people like in a variety of like fields, right? Because I have my lawyer friends and my lawyer colleagues, and I'm also president of the Capital District Women's Bar. So, you know, I have this association where I have all of these connections. And in that world, in the attorney world, we stay, you know, in touch weekly, either by text. I've arranged for a weekly Zoom happy hour. So actually it's always on Thursday. So Thursday night we get on Zoom, have our preferred beverage. And, you know, last week when we did it, we were on the happy hour for 2 hours, just because I think people are, this is just so hard. Humans are not wired for this, you know, this isolation and, you know, not having the ability to connect in person. So that's like in the lawyer world, how I stay in touch. For the yard, because I literally had just gotten off the ground. So my connections with my employees was just, I was starting to just build those connections. I do stay in touch with several of my employees, and I do send emails to my employees, kind of giving them some more resources and making sure, like, do they need help with anything? Because again, you know, I'm a lawyer, so there's a skill set that maybe I can help them with, navigating some of these resources. So, you know, I stay in touch with some of my employees by text and by email. And then outside of that, like family, you know, it's me and my husband here, isolated in our house. You know, my dad lives nearby, and, you know, we visit each other at the doorstep, right? Like, that's really hard. And then my niece, whom I'm really close to, is in California. So it's sort of sporadic. And most of the ways that I stay connected with people is all digital. And including with the small business friends that I've made in my short time downtown, right? So texting and things like that. So, you know, I cannot wait for this to be over, because this is just, you know,
I'm with you.
I already felt that people spent far too much time in front of a screen, and all this does is make us spend too much time in front of a screen. So
yeah, I hear that. I do better in person. That's what I tell people all the time.
yeah.
But that's awesome. And so you're on you work for Family Courts, correct?
So I'm on well, I'm not, so the family court is not my employer. I'm self-employed, and I am on a panel in the court system that assigns, on that particular panel, it's a certain group of attorneys that are assigned cases to represent children, and then cases to represent people who don't, other adults who can't afford a lawyer. So it's called, it's the panel of attorneys for children, and then the other piece of it is the 18B panel. So I do work in family court, but so for me, my ability to work was completely cut off when the governor shut things down, because on March 16th, the courts announced that they were shutting down. So from March 17th until literally this week, all of my cases stopped. You know, there's a lot of my colleagues who've been laid off from their firms. If they're self-employed and running their own firm, you know, they're falling off the cliff. You know, they have no more cases. And then the cases that they do have, you know, this impact to the average person is so huge that nobody's going to be able to afford a lawyer. After this ends, we're going to have lots of legal problems, but nobody's going to be able to afford a lawyer, you know? So the market for lawyers got 10 times tougher, you know?
Yeah,
so.
Definitely. My that caught my eye when I was asking Francesca about you, because my mom's family court judge. So
locally?
In St. Lawrence County. So
okay.
north.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I'm always amazed and very impressed by the work that you all do. So
Thank you.
definite fangirl moment. But and then, so one more question. I won't keep you much longer, but what's the success you had this week? What was kind of a win moment?
The win moment was when I learned that I qualified for the Paycheck Protection Plan, or program. So many businesses have tried to access that without success. But when I applied, I went through my community bank, which is Key Bank. So I made sure to use a bank that I had an existing relationship with, I had a rapport with, and they were very, very helpful. And Key Bank people are working like night and day to try to get these processed. So I would say that was a big win for me. And it certainly has alleviated a lot of my stress. The entity, I'll call it an entity, that the Paycheck Protection Program is applying to, though, is me as the attorney. The way that they calculate what you get out of that program, the yard was not open long enough to have that like basis for them to use in their calculation of what you can receive. So I had to pivot and put the lawyer hat back on and say, okay, well, I work as an attorney, and let me see if I qualify that way. And I did. And I guess that speaks to, the idea that always have a backdoor exit, always have something to pivot to, and make sure you don't let go of the skill that you have, because you never know when you're going to use it. And thank God I continued to practice last year, because if I hadn't, I'd be in a very, very tough spot.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that advice, is, use your skills and don't let them let them go. That's awesome advice. Well, thank you so much. It's great to, meet you in this format, and I'm sure sooner rather than later I will be meeting you in person. But, we appreciate having you and appreciate your time. So good luck.
Thank you so much. And I miss the Bull Moose Club, and I can't wait to come back into the space.
Yeah, us either. But
all right.
Well, enjoy your weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Leah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.